it makes the strongest first impression, okay? Wah, gempak ni, the way it looks, wah, stylo betul lah. Yes, true. But then, because behind me is the Jetour Dashing. No worries if you haven't heard of the brand yet because it's their first car in Malaysia. So far, it is a C-segment SUV going up against the Tiggo 7 Pro and the Proton X70. And I gotta say, off the bat, it looks really good. So good, it's dashing. Oh, wrong brand. This car was previewed first at the 2024 Malaysia Auto Show. And there was no details. It was just, it's there, have a look at it, get hyped, and be patient, I guess. And now that it's launched, well, what is the Jetour Dashing? Why is the Jetour Dashing? And is the Jetour dashing? And was it worth the wait? SUV fatigue. That's gotta be a real thing, right? Like, seems like everywhere there's some new SUV being launched, and to be honest, I'm having a hard time picking apart exactly what each of them offer that's, unique, because they all seem to be doing more or less the same thing. And Jetour is a brand from China. They focus on SUVs, and they're under the Chery group, the same Chery that in Malaysia only offer SUVs. And they also sell, or plan to sell, premium off-road ready SUVs, which puts me in mind immediately of J-Coupe. They've also got premium-ish coupe-like SUVs, but aren't those Omodas? There are also some boxy EV SUVs coming called iCars or iCowers. So, starting with the first question, what is Jetour's thing? I'm not sure. But if the Dashing is anything to go by, they are sleek, soft-roading SUVs. But they also have the T1 and T2, which are polar opposites design-wise and give off a very strong Land Rover Defender vibe. There are two variants, the Comfort, which kicks off the range at 110,000 ringgit, and the Prime, which keeps those main specifications but adds on more creature comfort and equipment. This one is the Prime at 117,000 ringgit, makes it one of the better deals in the Chinese SUV space because if you're looking for a Chinese competitor, it's a good deal. If you're looking for a Malaysian branded but also a Chinese competitor, also a good deal. Jetour is actually one of Chery's older brands, believe it or not, since it was established in 2018, whereas both J-Coupe and iCar, for example, are like little brothers, coming along 5 years later in 2023, just a few years ago. So my first thought is, okay, C-segment SUV from the Chery group, meaning this is a Tiggo 7 Pro underneath that pretty body. But you can't really blame me for thinking that either because like the Tiggo Cross just launched and already Jetour has their version of it called the VT5. In fact, they already have an EV version of that called the eVT5. And that model is also called the X50 in some markets. The name though being a little meme-ish, is a fitting one. The lines are sleek, the proportions are tasteful, it just looks good. Jetour themselves describe it as a futuristic looking SUV, but I disagree. This wide grille is really a big factor of why I like it so much. It's definitely Urus inspired with this element over here. But the thing is, it has a wide gaping mouth, but it doesn't look so stretched out and weird like that, like the Proton X50 suffers from, the new X50 at least. But most of the lighting elements are down here where the headlights live, but points lost for the fact that it says drive your future on one layer as well as the other layer of headlights. So I like how the checkered pattern of the front grille actually balances the whole front end, makes it really, really nice. And I like the fact that also they have some cool detailing that matches that front end look with the taillights. There's a little checkered pattern on the taillights as well. I mean, the rear end overall is really great because it's not a coupe SUV and yet has that slanting roofline kind of action going on over here. No dumb badging at all, just Jetour and Dashing and no fake exhaust tips. The only blemish that I can see is this weird third brake light over here, which has a little thing in the center that looks like a camera, but it's not. Camera is down here. I won't be surprised at all if this car just sells based on the look. People will drive by the showroom and walk in just based on how this thing looks. They'll go like, wow, what a nice car. In fact, Jetour, if you're listening, all you gotta do to advertise this car is get your dealers, in fact, to drive around the test drive car in town during lunchtime, get people looking at it, talking about it, and it'll just solve itself. It's got really nice athletic side profile lines. The wheel and tire combo are nicely judged and flattering to the overall design. Also, there's flush door handles because why not? This is the khaki white, but the Aurora green is the best color offered here by far. And honestly, it wouldn't take much to get people to notice this thing on the road. It turns heads, for sure. Look, I gotta bring up the Tiggo Cross because that, despite being smaller and less expensive, does have struts to open the bonnet. And when you do open the bonnet, you'll find the exact same engine too, because I'm pretty sure this 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine is the same one that you find in the Tiggo Cross turbo petrol variant, albeit in a detuned state. And I'm pretty sure this engine is also exactly the same one that I'll find in the Motor 5 with the exact same tune as well, 156 PS and 230 Newton meters of torque. The Chery Tiggo 7 has a 1.6 litre with 197 PS, also shared with a J7 from Jetour. The Proton X70 has a 1.5 litre as well, turbocharged petrol engine with 3 cylinders but more power than this and more torque as well. In fact, in China, they also have a PHEV version with something like 320 PS and 500 something-ish Newton meters of torque. So literally this is the lowest rung of engine they could bring into Malaysia. In fact, the X70 is a 3-cylinder but more power and soon to inherit the newer 4-cylinder engine from the X50. The Dashing has a 6-speed DCT, but the Motor 5 has a CVT and the Tiggo 7 is a 7-speed DCT. Also, it's front-wheel drive only and it's got remote engine start. I know I've seen these seats. Not exactly maybe, but definitely the ones in the Motor and the Chery. They all have this like through line near the headrest. But then I noticed things around the interior as well, like this start button over here. I first saw this Mercedes-Benz inspired start button in the Chery Tiggo 8 Pro. The overall impression is quite positive. But then, when you step inside and sit down and poke around, things start to change. This area right here is where you might put your elbow, okay? It is the topmost part, and usually automakers put an effort to make this as plush as possible, but they put the most nastiest material, scratchy hard plastic, on the top. Below that you have this finish over here, which is again plastic, but given a different finish to make it look nicer, but again it's hard, it's nasty. Below that, soft touch material with red stitching, looks decent. Below that, the armrest also looks decent. Then you get to the other things in this car. You get a lot of red accents, which I think this car doesn't really deserve and could do without. So you get dual 10.25-inch screens for the driver's display and infotainment. But I've seen this before really recently in, guess what? The Chery Tiggo Cross, a cheaper B-segment SUV. When you step up to the C-segment, you expect to get, a step up in screen size, and this is the same screens as the B-segment cars from Chery. And usually I don't mind because I'm not really a big fan of screens anyway. But these screens, they're a little bit dark, they're not very responsive, the refresh rate is pretty low. I can get around just about in the Jetour system just fine. In the Chery system, it's a little bit more confusing, but I can get around. In this, it is really confusing, unresponsive, and worse. And thank God, okay, for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, wireless by the way, because otherwise, having to navigate this interface is going to be a nightmare. The refresh rate too, especially for the driver's display, is pretty lousy. I can stomp on the gas, you can hear the engine roar a little bit more, you can accelerate, but that won't register in the rev counter. It's a weird sensation to have. And down here you have a rotary knob, and you think like, okay, it can be used like a normal rotary knob, but you rotate it and the volume increases, and that's it. And the only way to actually control stuff from the knob on the screen is to move it left and right, up and down. Potentially the most dangerous interaction method when you're on the road is doing this and having to see whether or not what you've just done made an impact on your tiny screen with tiny control interfaces. So there are these 3 buttons on the screen over here, okay? Right now, it says like a running icon over here. I'm guessing that's sport mode. If I press that, eco mode, sport mode, but I'm still in eco mode on the dash. Doesn't make sense. Over here is the lock icon. Okay, press that. The car doesn't unlock, nor does it lock. I have to press the button, the physical button over here. Hear that? And the last button over here on the left is a button that looks like a mirror. I'm guessing it'll fold the mirrors. The mirrors don't fold. So what's the point? Probably the most glaring thing so far that I've noticed in the Dashing is that you don't get dual zone climate control. And I bring up the Tiggo Cross again because immediately that struck me as, wow, this has dual zone climate control. And this, I thought it was single zone, but actually it's not even single zone. It's just air conditioning. I can adjust temperature in the way that you can adjust temperature on your normal aircon, which is you want it cooler or less cool. There's hot and cold buttons over here which you adjust. And you want fan speed, higher or lower, and that's it. Storage areas, sunglasses holder up there. Little storage area down here by the USB ports. You can fit your smart tag nicely. Big center cubby over here, which is ventilated, and your bottle can live over here. A single cup holder. Your phone can live next to the gear selector, which is ventilated, and a wireless charger. And then a lot of storage for the door cards, for a big bottle, and some other gubbins behind that as well. I know I've been ragging on this car so far, but it doesn't prove in the back seats because I'm pretty comfortable. I gotta say, I'm more comfortable than I was in the front seats because thigh support is pretty decent. If I tuck my feet under here, legroom is really good. This not being a coupe SUV, headroom is pretty good, and I have a panoramic sunroof, so I can have more light into the cabin. Leatherette seats, which I didn't mention, are actually comfortable. They're plush in China, automaker fashion. They're really squidgy and nice. Armrest in the middle, decent, just cup holders. Very good. You have dual air conditioning vents over here, little storage area below that. But you also get the things I didn't like about the front area, which is the nasty plastics over here. You get the door handle, which is nice, but ahead of that you get a tweeter, which does serve a purpose for the front seats. But over here, if you use a torch and just see through the grille, there's nothing inside here. Power boot as standard. Has a 486 liter boot, which actually beats the Chery Tiggo 7 Pro at 475 liters, but the Proton X70 actually beats all of them with 515 liters of space. You get a nice tonneau cover over here and a nice load floor for easy access. Besides, you get a space-saver rear wheel behind all of this flat floor goodness. And before I forget as well, Jetour Malaysia has no relationship with Chery Malaysia, which also operates Jetour Malaysia and iCar. So make of that what you will. The first 100 cars off the dashing will actually be CBU from China, but after that, everything will be CKD from Berjaya Assembly in Johor. Here's a list of the things that you get in the Prime, but not the Comfort, or what you get by spending 7k extra between the Comfort and the Prime. First of all, the big sunroof, you don't get that in the Comfort, obviously, only for the Prime. That makes sense. But you get only 4 airbags in the Comfort. On the Prime gets 6. You get only 4 speakers on the interior of the Comfort. The Prime gets 6, even though they're not very good. And you get no ADAS whatsoever on the Comfort. Look, I know it's an inexpensive SUV, but it's not that inexpensive, okay? You should get at least some ADAS, but the thing is, even on the Prime, you don't get a full ADAS suite. You get literally every other feature besides the most important one, AEB, meaning you get rear cross traffic alert, you get blind spot monitoring, you get lane change warning, you get a full 360 cam plus and 180-degree underbody view as well, but not the most important feature, which is AEB. There's 3 questions that I asked, not really questions, but it's more like a tone set for this video. What is the Jetour Dashing? Why is the Jetour Dashing? Is the Jetour dashing? So the first question is, what is the car, right? It is an SUV. It's a 6-segment SUV that looks really good. And after a few days with the car, I can honestly say that is a true statement. It is C-segment, it is an SUV, and it is good looking. But beyond that, I haven't really found anything underneath all that. I usually judge a car based on, well, first impressions, right? I'm like, everybody just kind of looks at the car and calls it how they see it, but the more time you spend with it, the more you can dig down into the real details and the nitty-gritty stuff, the more you figure out the substance of a car. And I haven't really found a lot of substance to do with this car because, I don't know, it's just a good-looking SUV and not much beyond that because it doesn't excel in any other way, maybe besides price. But not in a good way either. Yes, it is not as expensive as other SUVs in this category in Malaysia, but it also isn't as spec'd as well as other SUVs in Malaysia. Also from the Chery group, you know, because it has the best, it makes the best, the strongest first impression, okay? Wah, gempak ni, the way it looks, wah, stylo betul lah. Yes, true. But then there's nothing to back it up. It's frustrating because I had expectations, man, for this car, for this SUV. Like, ooh, yeah, that could be quite a strong seller because it makes such a huge impression at first glance. And then you look at the spec sheet and go like, oh, maybe not. With our YouTube channel, okay, there was always going to be 1 or 2 comments every day or every other day for a video that is like 3 years old or 2 years old at this point, or maybe actually a year old, a year plus old. It is the preview or the whatever of the Jetour Dashing when it made its first appearance in Malaysia at the 2024 Malaysia Auto Show. For some reason, people were just so hyped for that car and therefore very involved in the comment section. Everyone just debating and can't wait for this car. This car looks like a Lamborghini Urus, all that stuff. And then after the car launched, well, it just went quiet. Why was this car so hyped? And then I haven't really seen one. It's been like 2 months since this car launched. I should have seen it everywhere, and I haven't really seen even one on the road. And then I drove it, and then I realized, oh, I think I know why. Because this car doesn't really have a lot of, again, substance to back it up. Is the Jetour Dashing? Yes, it is. It'll get you looks. It will get you looks. I got a lot of looks in this car, maybe because, number one, it is good looking. Number two, they haven't seen one. So, you have basically the lowest rung of all the engines you could choose to get from the Chery SUV turbocharged petrol parts bin. The 1.5 turbo, the one you get in the Moto 5. It is definitely the lowest rung that you can get in the Jetour lineup globally, and it's not a bad choice. It's just that it goes up against other C-segment SUVs that have more power, and this thing is known to be an engine that is included in the Moto 5, and we know that as a B-segment SUV. So, I mean, if it was the first car with this engine, no one would care. But because that engine was also now in the B-segment Tiggo Cross, a much smaller car, it just gives you a little bit of like, really. But 156 PS, 230 Newton meters, it accelerates just fine. Roll-on performance is just fine. The 6-speed DCT is way better than the one you get in the CVT in the Moto 5. And the pairing of these two is pretty good. You know, you can drive at normal speeds and it behaves really quite well. It is not sporty in the least, okay, despite of how this car looks. But the pedal shifters, they are all right in feel. When you do pull on them, there is a lag. You don't really want to go into manual mode besides just maybe overriding the gearbox. You know, just kick down a little bit faster, more intuitively to overtake somebody. That's it. You don't really want to be like, oh, rally style, F1 style, downshift, downshift, downshift for a fast corner or whatever. No. Engine braking or whatever. Nah, don't even try with that, okay? But it has decent amount of power. It is fine for this engine. Maybe if you were to load this car up with cargo, all the 5 seats taken up, maybe it'll struggle a little bit more than the Chery Tiggo 7. Jetour, for whatever they are doing right now, are really focused on the after sales, at least enticing people with the assurance, the peace of mind of this engine, because it has a 10-year, 1 million kilometer warranty on the engine. The whole vehicle itself has a 7-year warranty, and that's pretty good. And you get 5 times free service, including parts and labor. So, at least in the short term, owning this car will be pretty much worry-free if they keep their end of the bargain. The Dashing, the name, how it comes across with the looks and everything, in first impressions, has nothing to do or no correlation with how it behaves on the road, because it drives, well, I think it doesn't even handle as well as a Tiggo 7, and the Tiggo 7 doesn't really handle that well. But this doesn't handle well at all. It handles decently, but even the Tiggo 7 handles better. Road noise is pretty pronounced in this car. I don't know what they've done to this interior, but single glazed windows, there is more just ambient noise intrusion. Wind noise is really well handled, but road noise does intrude. I'm running on GT tires, and usually GT tires, you know, the comfort tires that they have, the touring tires, are pretty good. But in this car, there's just more intrusion of noise. You hear the expansion joints as you go over them. And when you do go over certain bumps, like expansion joints, the ones that really upset the chassis of the car, you do feel the sway like you're in a pickup truck almost. It's a weird sensation to have in like a unibody chassis car like this. I don't know if it's overly sprung, but it's not uncomfortable. Just certain bumps can take you out of balance. So I picked it up 2 days ago. 2 days ago and a little bit more, because 2 days ago in the morning, now is the afternoon, 2 days later, and I've used more than half a tank. And I couldn't believe how much I used in the first day, because apparently the first day it came to me in sport mode, and I did not realize it was in sport mode because there's no difference between eco and sport mode. Maybe because it was in sport mode when I first collected the car, I used up a quarter of a tank in like 2 hours. How is that possible? Okay, so after that first day I went back home, I reset the trip computer, and since then I've been doing 141 kilometers since the reset, and I'm consuming 9.3 liters per 100 km. That's not great. And it's been 80% highway in that time. Not LDP highway like I'm on now, but actual clear roads kind of highway. How do you consume? And this car has a 57 liter tank, okay? So it's not like I'm just using half a tank because it has a small tank. This car has a bigger tank than the Chery Tiggo 7, which has a slightly bigger engine and a but considerably higher power output and torque output. And that never had an issue with fuel consumption like this car does. That's why the Dashing is so confusing and so frustrating to me, is that it talks a big talk when you first see it, okay? And your head sets up expectations of this car, like, ooh, now this is gonna be like a desirable car. And it does look like a desirable car from the outside. And then you step inside and go like, wait, what? This doesn't look as impressive as, or feel as impressive, or when you read the brochure or you read the spec sheet, it doesn't spec as impressively as a Tiggo 7 or a Proton X70, but it looks like it should be the most well specified of those three cars. And it just isn't. I don't know why Jetour in Malaysia spec this car to undercut those two competitors, those main competitors on price, but then spec it to the point that it doesn't really compete with them. You have to give up certain important things, like the lack of AEB. I mean, if you omit it for the base variant, all right, fair enough, but this is the Prime. This is supposed to be the flagship, the atas spec. Why don't you just take away the sunroof? The sunroof plays no practical utility in this car besides maybe impressing your friends. You can take away every single active safety feature except AEB for me. That is the single most potentially life-saving feature of any active safety suite, and it's just not here in this car. That is the foundational active safety suite feature in any car, and you don't get it in the Jetour. You get that in the Proton Beza with the ASA 2.0 or whatever it is that they have, and you don't get it here. Air conditioning. Spoiler alert, this doesn't have climate control, it has air conditioning. I didn't realize that at first. I just had expectations that it was actually climate control because, wow, look, this car looks really good, it looks expensive, it looks premium. I expected to have a premium feature set. And so I was like, you know what, it's kind of a hot day, I'm gonna press this button over here to increase fan speed. And I was wondering why the aircon went off. Apparently it went off because I turned the fan speed all the way down, because the big icon is on the left and the small icon to reduce fan speed is on the right. And they're almost the same size. They're not obviously smaller. I gotta look at it closely to realize, oh wait, it's smaller. It's balik, man. So, and then I realized, wait, what temperature am I at? Oh wait, I have no temperature controls because I have no climate controls. This is air conditioning. Air conditioning, bro. You want it colder? Whatever the car thinks is colder, or warmer, whatever the car thinks is warmer. There you go. That's it. It was that in succession with the fact that I was in the back seat and I was like, wait, this speaker tweeter doesn't do anything for the back seat. It is just an empty hole. But it has a speaker tweeter grill. Wow, really? It's just an empty hole that goes nowhere. Wow, like that. Wow. Like all those things, just like, whoa, this car is memang. You gotta get, there's trade-offs and then there's compromises. This car is compromised. It's not a bad car, but it's compromised, and it just doesn't deliver on the promises it sets for itself. Look, I get exactly why the Dashing is, or was, hyped. It genuinely looks like a really, really handsome car. But I think ultimately it's a bit compromised. It is let down by the interior and the NVH and the drive ultimately. But they made some really odd choices when speccing this car for the Malaysian market. It emits AEB, that's a big deal. It has relatively less power than the competition, and also its NVH leaves a lot to be desired. Maybe their idea was to undercut the competition on price. So do check it out, but just realize there are some compromises.